From above, the island of Little St. James glitters in the turquoise waters of the US Virgin Islands. Tourists saw it as a billionaire's paradise. The survivors knew it as Pedophile Island. Young girls arrived not by chance but by design. Private jets, the infamous Lolita Express, a Boeing 727 with Epstein's crest, ferried them in. From a nearby airstrip, helicopters delivered them to a nightmare. One survivor taken there for a photo shoot in the 2000s recalled, "I saw a dark and disturbing world. Epstein's reach touched the top of fashion, arts, and entertainment. This wasn't a resort, this was a fortress." Guards patrolled the perimeter, surveillance cameras tracked every arrival, and at the center stood a blue and white striped temple-like building, a monument to secrecy, its purpose never explained. But how does a man from a working-class Brooklyn family with no degree or legitimate business end up with a private island, a jet, and friends in high places? The answer begins long before Epstein, in the shadows where organized crime and intelligence first learned to work together. For us to understand Epstein, we first have to understand the system that built him. His operation wasn't unique. It was the latest evolution of a network that merged organized crime with intelligence decades earlier. In the 1940s, the National Crime Syndicate, led by Meyer Lansky and Lucky Luciano, partnered with U.S. intelligence. During World War II, naval intelligence used mob connections to secure the New York waterfront. After the war, that partnership expanded globally, with intelligence and organized crime working hand in hand. By the 1980s, the system had matured into what journalist Danny Casolaro called the octopus, a shadowy web linking agencies, mafia bosses, and corrupt politicians. Casolaro was investigating this when he was found dead in his West Virginia motel in 1991. His wrists were slashed and papers were missing. He had told friends he was close to exposing the biggest story of his life. At the center of his work, the Promise scandal. The Justice Department had stolen surveillance software from a company called Inslaw, added hidden backdoors, and sold it worldwide, allowing U.S. intelligence to spy on governments and banks. Distribution ran through channels tied to both organized crime and Israeli intelligence. When Jeffrey Epstein began climbing New York's social ladder, he wasn't inventing something new. He was stepping into a system that already weaponized blackmail on a global scale. His role was simple: update the playbook for a new era and become the most protected player. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born in 1953 in Coney Island, Brooklyn. His father worked for the Parks Department. His mother was a school aide. He briefly studied math and physics at Cooper Union and NYU, but he never graduated. Yet in the mid-1970s, Epstein landed a teaching job at the prestigious Dalton School, where New York's elite send their children. The headmaster, Donald Barr, the father of future Attorney General William Barr, presided over the students like the son of Senator Jacob Javits and the daughter of banker John Gutford. Bear Stearns chairman Alan Greenberg noticed Epstein's charm and hired him as a trader. But Epstein's true breakthrough came with Leslie Wexner, founder of Victoria's Secret's parent company, The Limited. Wexner was part of the secretive mega group. Wealthy businessmen like Edgar and Charles Bronfman, whose ties to Israeli intelligence ran deep. Wexner didn't just hire Epstein. He gave him control of his fortune and even sold him a Manhattan townhouse for $1. By the early 1980s, Epstein was a special limited partner at Bear Stearns, specializing in tax avoidance schemes for billionaires. His wealth grew, and so did his access to power. Like promised before him, Epstein wasn't just about the money. He was about leverage, and he was perfecting it. Epstein wasn't climbing alone. He was being groomed by men who understood that in the right hands, secrets are more valuable than money. The dinner parties and private events Epstein held weren't just gossip sessions for socialites. They were a marketplace of influence. Guests ranged from presidents and princes to university presidents, financiers, and cultural gatekeepers. Bill Gates, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, Larry Summers, Leon Black, Glenn Dubin all moved through Epstein's orbit. His reach into fashion, arts, and science let him cultivate a credibility and cover. Even Stephen Hawking visited Little St. James. But Epstein's public persona belied a darker business model. Investigators found thousands of labeled CDs and hard drives, safes, and meticulously organized records, evidence suggesting a deliberate collection and cataloging of compromising material. And that inventory looked less like a private collection and more like intelligence files, with names, dates, locations, cross-references, exactly the sort of material that could create leverage over powerful people. Epstein's world looked modern, but it echoed an older script. To see where the money, tradecraft, and protection first converged, we first need to look at Robert Maxwell, a media tycoon, alleged spy, and man whose death left a trail of missing millions. Epstein's Palm Beach mansion functioned like a recruiting hub. The operation began in plain sight. Malls, high schools, social spaces where vulnerable teens could be found. Recruiters, who were often women working for Epstein, most infamously being Ghislaine Maxwell, or other former victims turned recruiters, approached teenagers with promises of quick cash, modeling gigs, or career help. A single offer for a massage could become a weekly ritual of abuse. Victims were paid in small sums, then pressured and shamed and groomed into recruiting others. The survivors of this abuse described a pyramid of exploitation. Girls were paid modest amounts for sexual acts, then encouraged to coerce to recruit friends. Money, praise, and the illusion of opportunity created dependence, while Epstein and his inner circle converted the dependence into a renewable supply of victims and allegedly compromising material. Police accounts from Palm Beach in the mid-2000s described a revolving door of underage females entering Epstein's home, testimony that would form the basis of his later federal investigation. The system was simple yet effective. Victims became recruiters, and silence was bought in cash. But then law enforcement finally closed in. What happened next revealed just how far Epstein's protection really stretched. By 2006, Palm Beach detectives had dozens of sworn statements describing a systematic operation. The case that reached federal prosecutors looked like it was the beginning of a long public reckoning. Instead, Epstein assembled a high-powered legal team, top defense lawyers, political operatives, and behind-the-scene negotiators. The result was a secretive non-prosecution agreement in 2008. Epstein pleaded to 2 state counts of solicitation of prostitution, served 13 months with extensive work release privileges, and received broad immunity protections for unnamed co-conspirators. Victims were not fully informed of this deal, some only learned years later. The agreement shocked many legal observers. It raised questions about prosecutorial discretion, political pressure, and the role of influential defenders in shaping outcomes. U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta later defended the deal, but would himself face scrutiny and resignations over the handling of this case. For survivors, the message was clear: power buys protection, and the mechanisms that once distributed surveillance software and covert assets could be repurposed to shield the powerful from accountability. Justice had been reduced to a transaction. Epstein walked free, his network intact, his secrets intact. But the architecture of power he relied on wasn't new. The blueprint, written decades ago by another fixer, Roy Cohn.
Here's how to cause a fuss at a gathering of American judges or lawyers or just thoughtful people. Merely say the name Roy Cohn. People will leap at you with allegations against the man going back to his association with Joe McCarthy. Some sheer invention, some true but unprovable, and a lot that's true and proven.
Before Epstein, there was an earlier master of secrets, Roy Cohn. As chief counsel to Senator Joseph McCarthy during the Red Scare, Cohn perfected the art of using hidden truths, real or fabricated, as weapons. His career became a study of leverage, prosecuting Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, advising Donald Trump, and maintaining a Rolodex of compromising material on political and business elites. Cohn allegedly hosted blackmail parties in New York where politicians and businessmen were lured into compromising situations. Intelligence agencies have long used the same tactic known as a honey trap. In 2017, Lebanese actor Ziad Itani described how Mossad operatives used a fabricated love affair to frame him as a spy, a modern echo of the method's enduring effectiveness. Epstein, like Cohn before him, seems to have realized that secrets, once recorded, could buy a kind of untouchable status. Epstein had perfected Cohn's methods, but unlike his predecessor, he would not die quietly. His empire was about to face its greatest test. When Alex Acosta claimed Epstein belonged to intelligence, it wasn't speculation. It was confirmation of what investigators had long suspected. Epstein's operation bore all the hallmarks of a sophisticated intelligence asset. But to understand how deep this went, we still must examine further the network that created him. Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, wasn't just a confirmed Mossad asset. He was central to one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations of the 20th century. Maxwell's media empire served as a cover for technology transfer operations, moving cutting-edge software and hardware to Israeli intelligence. When he died mysteriously in 1991, falling from his yacht, he left behind debts of over $400 million and a daughter who inherited his intelligence connections. Ghislaine would bring those connections to Jeffrey Epstein to continue the same mission. The intelligence question became more of a certainty one. Amongst Epstein's belongings, the FBI found an Austrian passport with Jeffrey Epstein's photo, a false name, and a Saudi address. Standard intelligence tradecraft. But more telling was the thousands of labeled CDs and hard drives found in the Manhattan mansion. These weren't random collections, they were organized like intelligence files. Names, dates, locations, meticulously cataloged. In 2025, a DOJ official, Joseph Schnitt, was caught in a Project Veritas honeypot sting, admitting plans to redact Republican names from Epstein's files while throwing Maxwell a bone to keep her silent.
But those files do exist.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of pages of files. They'll redact every Republican or conservative person in those files, leave all the liberal, democratic people in those files.
I think they visited that Maxwell person
Yeah,
and also involved.
got transferred to a minimum security prison too recently,
Oh,
which is against BOP policy because she's a convicted sex offender. They're offering her something to keep it on shut.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
This wasn't just corruption, it echoed the blackmail tactics that intelligence services had perfected the decades earlier. Epstein's job was an access agent, collecting compromising material on the powerful for foreign intelligence services. The evidence suggests his operations served multiple masters, providing leverage for Israeli intelligence, protection for organized crime figures, and profit for himself. Epstein's blackmail operation wasn't just a criminal enterprise, it was statecraft by other means. Robert Maxwell was the conduit between Israeli intelligence and some of the most sensitive technology transfers of the Cold War era. This quote can be attributed to a former intelligence official that spoke to Whitney Webb anonymously, whose work also has been integral in making this video. This network had operated in the shadows for decades, but a groundbreaking newspaper expose was about to drag Epstein's operation into the light, threatening not just him, but everyone the system was designed to protect. In 2018, Julie K. Brown's Miami Herald series Perversion of Justice gave a voice to over 60 survivors who detailed Epstein's abuse in heartbreaking clarity. The articles exposed the 2008 plea deal leniency, political pressure behind it, and the betrayal of the victims left in the dark. Public outrage rightfully exploded. Politicians from both parties demanded investigations. Survivors, silenced for years, saw a path finally to justice. Surprisingly enough, under William Barr, the Justice Department reopened the case. Prosecutors in New York, led by Jeffrey Berman, prepared new charges. Epstein's empire of power was crumbling, and the world was watching. Then in July 2019, the FBI raided Epstein's Manhattan mansion, the one that he got from Leslie Wexner for just $1, uncovering not just evidence of abuse, but a meticulously organized blackmail operation we had suspected all along. July 6, 2019, federal agents arrested Jeffrey Epstein at the Teterboro airport. He had just returned from Paris on his private jet, but luckily, this time, there was no escape. Charges, trafficking minors, and conspiracy. They were built on years of survivor testimony that was ignored the first time around. When the FBI raided his Manhattan townhouse, the picture was oh so clear. Agents found piles of cash, diamonds, the earlier mentioned fake passport, thousands of images, nude underage girls, a sex doll hanging from a chandelier. The Justice Department announced that Epstein's crimes were worldwide. Survivors came forward in droves, and justice finally seemed possible. But in the shadows, alarm bells were ringing. If Epstein talked, what secrets might he reveal? And whose careers or governments might he collapse? With Epstein back behind bars, survivors prepared for their day in court. But before they could face him, someone or something made sure he would never speak again. August 10th, 2019, just weeks after his arrest, Epstein was found dead in his cell at Manhattan's Metropolitan Correctional Center. The official ruling? Suicide by hanging. But the circumstances sparked immediate suspicion. Cameras outside his cell malfunctioned, guards slept on duty, and falsified logs. No photos documented the scene. The alleged sheet he used was thinner than normal, an intentional design to not allow for such an application. Famed medical examiner Dr. Michael Baden, who was there for the autopsy, concluded the injuries were more consistent with homicidal strangulation. A quote from Dr. Michael Baden on the autopsy findings: "There were burst capillaries in the eyes, greater evidence suggesting homicide." To many, it looked less like negligence and more like containment. Epstein's death meant some of his secrets died with him. The documents, flight logs, and names remained sealed. The phrase "Epstein didn't kill himself" went viral, not just as a meme, but as shorthand for public recognition. The establishment protects itself first. Ghislaine Maxwell wasn't just Epstein's companion. She was his recruiter, his organizer, and by many accounts, his accomplice. When she was arrested in 2020, prosecutors said she had lied and groomed girls as young as 14. At her 2021 trial, 4 women testified against her, leading to a 20-year sentence. Yet Maxwell's own comments hinted at a deeper truth. From prison, she claimed Epstein was murdered and suggested that explosive secrets were still being held. Meanwhile, Epstein's network of high-profile friends and accomplices, Clinton, Trump, Prince Andrew, Leon Black, Bill Gates, remain untouched. Black quietly paid Epstein $150 million for tax advice. Following the fallout from the confirmed ties, he resigned from Apollo. Prince Andrew settled Virginia Giuffre's civil suit for millions but admitted no guilt. Trump, Clinton, and Gates denied knowing anything, despite documents, flights, and photos proving otherwise, making it look less like justice and more like a managed containment. Epstein was dead. Maxwell was in prison. But the network they had still survived. The people demanded answers, but would the powers that be ever let the full truth come to the surface? Epstein is gone. Maxwell's in prison, at least for now. Justice feels hollow. Redacted names, sealed evidence, shield the guilty. The courage of survivors sparked New York's Child Victims Act, extending time for those that were victims to seek justice. Today, Epstein's name has become cultural shorthand for corruption too big to prosecute. We know the establishment worked to protect him. We know intelligence, finance, politics were all intertwined. We know Epstein's files form a chain that runs deeper than any one man. From an FBI memo released in July 2025 on the review of the Epstein files, they said, and I quote, "This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. There was also no credible evidence that found Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. Consistent with prior disclosures, this review confirmed that Epstein harmed over 1,000 victims. After a thorough investigation, FBI investigators concluded that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City on August 10, 2019. The conclusion that Epstein died by suicide is further supported by video footage from the common area of the special housing unit where Epstein was housed at the time of his death." End quote. So, we are supposed to believe that this was a lone actor that trafficked thousands of victims just for himself. The parties, the cameras, the footage, the mountains of evidence that have already seen the light of day, all just mere coincidences. The final truth of Epstein's operation may never fully surface into light, because maybe it was never meant to. Some networks are designed not to be exposed, but to survive. In the end, Epstein wasn't the beginning or the end. He was the middle, the mask over a still alive operation, still protected and still out of reach. Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Should say, or is it? Is this the end? We don't know. Tens of thousands of emails between Jeffrey and Ghislaine were leaked recently. And I feel like this kind of information needs to not be swept under the rug. One way you could do that is by sharing this video with another person, maybe liking, commenting, and subscribing. This is our first kind of foyer into a video essay format. And so if you like it, let us know and we'll do longer form versions, because I didn't want to start with a 2 hour long thing that only got 250 views. So let me know. There's so much more to this topic than just Jeffrey and Ghislaine. There's the Maxwell family as a whole. There's Les Wexner. There's obviously Donald Trump, the connections with the intelligence agencies. So if you really want to see this, make sure that you share it, comment, and all that stuff to let us know. And remember that I'm a great swimmer. I'm not sewer slider, and don't go near ledges. So keep it right.